Hey guys, so Luna here. Welcome to That Crypto Hustle podcast. Super happy today. I have with me Mike Kalomeni. Did I
Yeah.
pronounce that correctly?
Yes, absolutely.
Yay! So Mike is actually the co-founder and business development at Elementus. And he actually has a very interesting background. Also, he was previously a rocket scientist, so he's turned a crypto enthusiast. So can you tell us a little bit about your life as a rocket scientist? I love how that sounds. So you worked for Airbus for a couple of years, correct?
Yeah, so that was part of the missions I worked with as a management consultant, but that was after my career in rocket science.
Ah,
Before that, I was doing research both for the Swiss Space Center, so back in Switzerland, and then for Caltech in Los Angeles. So at that time, it was more about trying to understand a rocket trajectory, how to put a spacecraft in orbit the right way. For the Swiss Space Center, I wanted to actually send a spacecraft to grab the only Swiss satellite in orbit and destroy it. A unique mission to do, and it's very complicated to actually reach the right trajectory. So I had to investigate that. They actually sent me in Moscow to learn from the best there and trying to come back with some knowledge. So that was very fun. And the second aspect was Caltech indeed for a little bit less than a year. When I was in the lab having access to all their instruments, it's crazy what they have there. And it was basically 1 year of gathering data and analyzing the data on terrace under the sun of the California.
so
So it was
it's all starting to make sense. This is why you love data. So
yeah.
how did you fall into cryptocurrency space?
Yeah, so one of my closest friends was living in San Francisco in April last year and came to visit me in Paris. And he said, "Hey, Jude, people talk about Bitcoin. We should check it out." So we spent 2 days reading the Bitcoin white paper. And after brainstorming and challenging each other, we came up to the conclusion that that was the future. And we had to be part of it because the impact would be so big that, we had to help, right? So become completely obsessed since then.
And I must applaud that because you're probably one of the few people who actually read the white paper. I feel like a lot of people claim that they did. I still have to get through it. It's definitely on my to-do list, but definitely applaud you for that. So the other thing is, obviously you're super sharp, love data. So how did Elementus come about?
Yeah, so the CEO of Elementus, Max Galka, was working on a prototype for a year, starting last summer, so 1 year ago, because he came up from the financial service industry, and also he's a data science professor at UPenn. So he came up both worlds, and by discovering crypto, he said, "That's weird. We don't have access to data. We need to we need to solve that fundamental problem." So he came up with this prototype for a little less than a year and then decided to build a company to actually go to the market with this product. So that's when I joined to help me build this company.
So,
And
you guys are really well known for your infographic, which went viral. So in 2017, just to give you guys some background information, Elementus published a token sale infographic, which essentially showed every token sale that successfully raised at least 100K. From the beginning of 2013 through the end of 2017. And what's amazing, I actually saw the infographic during the Coinsbank blockchain cruise. Miko Matsumura showed it in his presentation. And also apparently Brooke Pierce showed it at the EOS launch. And I'm sure plenty of other speakers, celebrity speakers have been using it. So I'm sure you guys are super proud of the following, but what was sort of the idea behind it, developing the infographic? What were your overall goals?
yes, so we're super proud of that chart, super happy that it helps the industry and everyone talks about it because I feel like it's a reference point that no one had before. And so it was something to provide to the industry, right? And the main reason that, justified why I asked this question and why finding this data is that if you ask anyone in the space how much money has been raised, you will have a different answers, right?
Yeah.
Each time. No one really knows because there is no data available. So we figured, well, let's check blockchain data and have some kind of a, objective way to look at how much money has been raised. And it's a good way to understand the trend of the market, right? What's the psychology of the investors and so on. So that was the main reason, right? Provide this reference point that no one had.
So how did you guys gather the data?
Yeah, so what we do is we take blockchain's data, and in this case it's Ethereum. So by running nodes on Ethereum blockchain, and then we store it in our database in a way that is super easy and fast to query the data, to get it out and analyze it. And the second aspect is that the challenge is to identify the accounts owned by the same ICO team, right? Because what you want is not only the public key address of the ICO, but all the accounts so that you can check that everything goes smoothly and you didn't miss an inflow going into the accounts of the ICO. So the challenge for that is to do some kind of machine learning analysis where you try to say, oh, this account is interacting a lot with this other account, so maybe they are related. And after some while, you see that it's actually owned by the same entity. And so once you have that stamp, that label, then you can start to count how much money flows in, how much Ether flows in. And so that's how you get how much money has been raised.
So what were your findings while you were developing this infographic?
It's really hard. It's really hard to get the data out of it. First to get blockchain data, everything needs to be smoothly, right? You need to download the data. It takes 2 months to get the full history of Ethereum. So that's already a big pain to go through. And the second aspect is solving this problem of identifying the entities is really hard as well. It's not trivial at all.
Did you see discrepancies? And you don't have to obviously share names, but did you see discrepancy between the data you were able to pull and what was publicly put out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So all the ICO websites that we have checked and compare the data with us basically had 50% underestimation. So in most of the case, they were saying, oh, they raised, $10 billion or $14 billion in March or something like this, when actually it was more around $20 or $24 billion. So everyone was really underestimating how much money has been raised. And the reason why is that those guys, they have to scrape internet and they try to find information on the websites or to talk to people. But there is a lot of ICOs that occur in the shadow without anyone knowing about it because they just don't need to do marketing or don't try to go that way. And so, fundraising happens, but there is no way to check it out except by looking at the blockchain data.
So how do you think this lack of transparency and is essentially like hindering the blockchain and cryptocurrency market?
Yeah, I think there is two main problems. The first one is the scams that happens. One of them is, for example, to inflate how much money you've raised. So as an ICO, you can lie and say that you raised $10 million, but in fact you raised $1 million, but try to, hide it by doing some kind of pattern on the blockchain where the equivalent in the traditional world would be that you have $1 in your bank account, and you send that dollar to your other bank account. And you send it back and you do that 1 million times. And then you say to people that you have $1 million. And, if they have access to the first account you own, they see basically $1 million going in time. But they have no idea that the money that goes out is also owned by you. So a lot of ICOs are doing that. And that inflates demand. And then when they're listed, it's much higher. And people FOMO while actually there is no demand for the ICOs. So that's a big problem with the industry, the scams around this. And I think the second aspect is that we lack a feedback loop, right? We lack an understanding of what works and what doesn't work. So how to improve our decision making, how to make sure that the way we build stuff is the smart way. Right now, everyone is just trying and has no way to assess back.
So, what can we do essentially like to resolve this issue? What are you guys at Elementus trying to do?
Yeah, so I think there's, first providing those information to all of those websites and to all of those actors in the ecosystem that needs to basically improve the quality of the information out there. And so that people, really know what's happening, right? And there is no less lie in the space, or less misinformation, I would say. The second aspect is really to help people deep dive into the data to try to find theories or, check their assumptions, because we have a lot of venture capital funds who try to think about, velocity, how to value crypto assets, and so on. But it's only theory because they have no way to measure what's going on, right? So if you can provide those key metrics in this blockchain, suddenly the theories can be checked. And so then you can iterate and find the right model that actually describes what's going on into the blockchain. And hopefully then when you build a new protocol, you build it with the right tools or the right theory behind it. So I think it's all first to reduce the misinformation type of information, and this is to help people their decision making to build.
But this lack of transparency also like might piss off a lot of people. No, have you guys been getting like negative feedback as well? I'm sure. No.
Yeah, so not directly, right? We don't have people coming to us and tell us that we should stop because it's bad. No, people are super excited about what we do and truly believe that it can help the industry, and they actually want to support us. I think, the origin of Bitcoin maybe is a bit misaligned with what we're doing, but simply because no one was using it at the time. Now, the technology itself is super transparent, so you cannot argue that, you want a lack of transparency. What you have is, because it's transparent, it's valuable, and everyone can use it, and it's open. So I think it's more about who supports Privacy Coin, and those people, whether it's legit or not, have a good reason to actually use Privacy Coin because they may want to avoid our software, right, or our analysis or our insights. So at the end of the day, they just have to choose this blockchain instead of the public one, and all good.
So is KYC, so know your customer, and anti-money laundering regulations, how is that going to help, and is that going to affect your ability to essentially be able to read the data?
Yeah, so I think the anti-money laundering aspect is very important to bring financial institutions and banks in the industry, right? All of those banks, they cannot manage to have an employee involved with dark web addresses and deals, or their clients as well. So they have to follow the rules, and right now there is no real good tools on Ethereum that helps to do that. So I talked to several banks, and they told me that they have to do a manual analysis on Etherscan, and it takes so much time that it's a waste of resource. So anti-money laundering is necessary to have those institutions come in and mature the space, but they need the right tool to do that, and right now it's not there. So that's for the AML part. Super important, but not mature enough yet. And I would say that, by the way, exchange platforms are a way to actually hide what's going on, because all the centralized transactions on those exchanges are off the chain. So you cannot see what's going on except if you have the data from exchange platform. So those exchange platforms have also a responsibility to actually work with regulators to promote those transparency and help out who are the bad actors. In combination with on-chain analysis tool like us.
So, but how is that going to affect things on your end?
Yeah, so for us, it's more about finding the right product, because we have all of those data, and now we need to manage the resources the right way, so build the right product at the right time. So since we have limited resources, we are not a huge company, our goal is also to provide this API to actually other companies or other project or developers who wants to build an application on top of this API. And so that application could be for AML, a specific use case, right? And this idea would be to have this kind of network of everyone querying the data and addressing their own use case.
So how can blockchain data really help improve the industry, you think?
Yeah, I think it's related to how people understand what's going on, because there is a lot of fear in the market, and people don't know about it or are uncomfortable about Bitcoin and so on, especially those who are just heard it in mass media. So when you can start to actually provide information on how much it's being used and, who are the people using it, what are the companies that are legit that use it and so on, suddenly the fear is, damped, and you can start to talk to executives with those data, and they can start to actually make, build their own conviction using data and not using only information from mass media. So that gives them, better insights on what's going on, and they may feel more comfortable, going into the space.
Right. So, I mean, essentially, like, your goal is to help as far as like mass adoption and help get as many people to, when they're interested in investing in a potential token sell, to have the full data and the full picture of what they're getting themselves into, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the first one is how to, help the industry grow and be adopted massively. And so for that, we need as much transparency as we can, because it's so global that no single regulators can do anything about it. So it's either they all coordinate together to make it mature, or we self-regulate in the industry, right? But how do you push people to self-regulate? It's to provide radical transparency, because since they have skin in the game, they have like this stake. They have to basically behave appropriately, otherwise they would get punished by this transparency. So suddenly everyone would start to behave more appropriately for the benefits of the industry. So providing this transparency should help for the adoption. And the second aspect is sustain this network of value, right? I mean, in the long term, if you imagine all the securities traded on blockchain, all the assets digitalized, all the house arts and so on, and all the payments in the world on this universal network of value, made of interoperable blockchains, then you need a real good index of all of those transactions to make sure that everything goes smoothly and people know what's happening, right? If you think about the government that has, its monetary policy or is trying to understand the flow of money going out of their country or going in and so on, and if it happens on the blockchain, they'll need a tool to make sure everything goes right. And if it doesn't, they need also this feedback. So I think it's really important as well to provide this data for the very long term to sustain the use of the network.
So what's your user case? Do you envision everyday consumer to be using Elementus in the future, or would it be more a B2B platform? Like, what are you guys what are your overall goals right now?
Yeah, so we are considering 4 market segments or 4 products.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is for financial institutions, right? Those people, they're not in the game yet, but they want to understand what's going on. So to provide those information. Mm-hmm. And so this is very B2B focused. Mm-hmm. The second aspect is compliance. So to help all of those banks and regulators to actually have access to those tools, either for law enforcement or to actually make sure that, the people they're working with are legit and follow the rules they have to follow. So here also it's a very specific product addressing a very specific use case. The third one, I would say, is about a block explorer. So it's basically the equivalent of what we have on Etherscan, but instead of having a static view of the blockchain, you would have a dynamic. You would be able to follow the fund, right, and then see from where it goes, where it comes from, and where it goes. Much easier than what we have right now. And that could help retail people just to check that their transaction went to the right people, and also to make sense themselves. If they are curious and they want to ask themselves those kind of analysis, they can do it. I would say this is like a blockchain search engine, right? Like you would have for Google on internet. You could imagine Elementus as being the same, but for the blockchain. Now, of course, the use cases are a bit different because on Google it's basic information to help with your life, your daily life, right? With blockchain, it's to make sure that the way you deal with money is as expected. And the fourth, because there is a lot of applications, the fourth use case or the fourth market segment is for investors, for funds, for VC, to improve their understanding of what's going on and their decision making by providing them the right insights. For example, right now, everyone is seeing this Ether collapsing, and the question is how much money those ICOs have left to sell. Right? Mm-hmm. And so if you're an investor and you see that all the ICOs have already sold everything, the sell pressure is much lower than if they had the money to have Ether to sell. So it's safer, right? And if you have Ether. So those kind of questions help to understand the state of the market as well.
Right. So essentially, like the main goal is to help more institutional funds come to the market, and then the everyday consumer, if you will, as well, to have a better understanding of the overall landscape. So how would that reflect, I guess, in the future if a private coin doesn't want to be using your platform? I guess those are the type of investments where people will have to take a greater risk if they're interested in that specific crypto or that specific cryptos like blockchain project. And how do you think like this transparency is going to impact? Because there was a lot of discussion around KYC at this conference, and I'm just wondering, how do you think it's going to impact?
So in terms of privacy coin, I think people have the choice to either use it or not use it. I know that banks, for example, if they see their clients dealing with privacy coin, they don't want to accept them. So there will be some kind of censorship behind this. So if you can use privacy coin without anyone knowing about it, then keep using it if you think that's really what you need. But the actual law right now are not compatible with privacy coin. So there is a middle ground to find between showing everyone how much money you have and how you spend it, and doing everything in the shadow. So for Elementus itself, we care about providing more transparency. So of course, on some privacy coins, you may be able to run some kind of analysis to understand how they are being used. But doing a KYC on this will be extremely hard because that's the purpose of privacy coin, right? To remove the KYC link. Now, it's I'll say at the end of the day, if you use Bitcoin and everyone knows your public address, everyone knows how much money you have and how you spent it, right? Mm-hmm. It's like everyone has access to your bank account and your payments. That's not very, good for the industry itself. So it's legit to ask your question. And that's why we're not going to identify individuals and we stick with actors into the ecosystem, for actors that can influence what's going on, not individuals. I think that's about it. Right.
Awesome. So where can we find you on social media? Do you guys have a Telegram group, etc.?
Yeah, so we don't have a Telegram group, but we have Twitter. It's Elementus _IO. And we also are on LinkedIn, so you can follow us as well, Elementus. And I'll try myself and Max, Galka, he's a good Twitter account, very well followed. So you can find regular updates on our analysis and our opinion on the market. And we'll also try to find other sources that can actually promote more transparency. So you can count on us to get more information on that.
And you've also been really actively speaking at different conferences. Actually, that's how we met in Iceland, Reykjavik.
Yeah.
What's the next conference you're going to? Are you going to Asia anytime soon?
Yeah, so I mean, it's amazing that we met in Iceland. It's very fortunate. The Icelandic Blockchain Foundation is amazing. Those guys, they're really rock. So that was very fortunate. So actually I'm speaking, hopefully if everything is confirmed, end of the month in Tokyo at the FinSum event, FinTech event. And there will be a lot of financial institutions, so it will be a good way to, try to help them understand what's going on into the space and go in.
Awesome. Well,
and I may go to San Francisco as well for a blockchain week. Right?
Oh, when is that? Oh, okay, awesome. Yay. Yeah. Well, thank you, Mike, so much for giving me the time of the day to answer all my different questions. You guys make sure to check us out, Crypto Hustle. The podcast is now available on iTunes. Also check us out on YouTube and obviously our Facebook group. Thank you guys for joining us and make sure to give us a like. Bye.
Thank you, Luna. Bye-bye.